Happy Friday, March 26th, 2021. Welcome to the 3 things I learned in Saas Sports Tech and Live events. What I learned selling a sponsorship to a gentleman's club to a boxing fight in 2004. So in 2004, Staples Center hosted the Vitaly Klitschko against Corey Sanders heavyweight title fight, which was on HBO. When that happened, our team, I was a lowly sales rep at the time, would sometimes be contracted to sell the tickets and some of the sponsorships for it. And that was mostly an inbound job. We didn't have a lot of time to sell these things, so it was mostly you manned the phones for a few hours and then you went and you tried to find a way to sell things to these different companies. I'm manning the phones and I get a call from a company called Stars Planet. I don't know what they do. They're now out of business. But the gentleman on the line, David, who has a very deep voice, tells me that he owns a gentleman's club. Now, I'm not all that comfortable selling to a gentleman's club, and I don't know what the rules are on it. It's well above my pay grade. So I told him I would call him back. He wanted to spend north of 6 figures. He thought this would be a good event for his club. So I took it to my boss at the time, Chris, and he was as uncomfortable as I was. And this was above all of our pay grade. So he took it upstairs and said, "What are we allowed to sell to this kind of business?" And they came back with a lot of rules and restrictions. Nothing that can be on the air. We don't want anything in the bowl, that sort of thing. So we went back to him with a list of things that we thought he might be interested in. A couple days later, David called back, and we were wrong in all of our assumptions of what he was interested in. Here's what David bought, and he asked for this specifically. He bought 10 tickets ringside on the TV side, so they would show up on the television feed. He bought 6 signage placements in the concourse, so outside of the bowl, but in the concourse, which are nice, but they're generally not the most sought after when they're not rolled into a much larger sponsorship and partnership that's part of the event itself. He bought 3 signage placements outside the building. Now, this was before LA Live. So outside the building, there was just a couple of big parking lots across the street. And he bought 10 parking passes for buses. So our assumption was he was just going to bus people to the fight or something. We've seen people do that before with restaurants that we've done business with. All of the inventory he wanted was really undesirable, so we didn't know how to price it. Most of that stuff was either thrown in or went unsold. So eventually the whole sponsorship priced out at roughly $110,000. And I remember about 90% of that cost was just the parking passes and the tickets. So what did David do? Turns out he sent 10 of his talent to the fight in the seats, and they were draped in Silver Rain gear, which was the name of the club that he owned. They had little cards that he had asked me in advance if he was allowed to hand out, and we said, no, you can't do that in the bowl, but you can do it outside. And what he did was he used the signage that he had bought in the concourse and then outside as arrows, almost to filter people to the parking lot where he had bought those parking passes. And he put talent who left the fight a little bit early at each one of the assets, handing out cards along the way and shepherding people towards the 10 shuttle buses that he had in the parking lot that were going in a loop back and forth to his club. David called me on Monday and left me a message, something that's infamous. I've told this story 100 times, telling me that it was by far the wildly most successful event he'd ever had in the last 10 years and a huge night for the club, and inviting me and a friend on Friday to, as he would say, experience some real VIP treatment at the club. That Friday night, I did not go. But these are the things I learned. I actually learned a lot from this story. There are 3 things I learned from the time I sold a sponsorship to a gentleman's club for a professional boxing fight. 1, the customer knows their business far better than we ever will. Yes, Sales 101 teaches us to try to get on the same side of the table as the customer and then try to build out packages that might be interesting to them. Make sure you show them everything that you're capable of, even the things that you think may not be valuable to you. We've learned this lesson over and over again here at Ticket Manager. When we go and we pitch our product to people, we have thousands of configurations that have been built by a number of companies, and we often get the comment, "How did you guys think of this?" The answer is we didn't. Our customers did. They know their business better than we do. Our job is to try to build around that. If this was a competitive situation that we were talking about with Stars Planet, we would have lost. Everything we put in front of them was wrong. But the one saving grace we had in it was that we showed them everything that was available, and he used his experience and he used his understanding of his business to make it a win for him. That's number 1. Number 2, pricing is very difficult. If you don't know how to price something, it's probably best to hold it back as part of the package and understand what the overall investment is going to be and what the use case is before you put it out there. We've learned this lesson the hard way many times at Ticket Manager, where things that we think are valuable, the customer doesn't need, and every customer is totally different. So when you're pricing assets, especially on the sponsorship, ticket, and software side, it's really important that you give your customer the opportunity to see everything that you have to offer, and then price it according to the kind of outcomes that they're looking for. David paid roughly $110,000 for something that he probably would have paid significantly more for. We left money on the table on that one, so the win was his. That's number 2. And number 3, something that comes up a lot today, experience is so underrated. Look, every generation comes out and thinks that they're the ones who know it all. X was the same way as millennials, is the same way as Zs. Because we hear stories about people who show up and build something out of nowhere, whether that's Zuckerberg or Gates or Jobs or Bezos or whoever. There's a million examples of those. But when you actually dig into those stories, you find out that they had mentors. People who had experience, that understood how to work the system as it was at that time. Those mentors came in the way of investors, they came in the way of mentors, they came in the way of all kinds of different relationships that they had with those people. Even Phil Knight was super reliant on his dad and on the experience and expertise of his track coach at Oregon. Experience is underrated more so now than ever. David had experience. He knew what his club needed, and it turned into a big win for him. That's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week on The 3 Things.